Welcome to the 7th of the Tech Time with Lawrence and Carl series. This episode, we're going to talk about generators, postage, and computer backups. So let's start with generators. So I think you all know that there are generally a few different types of generators. And generators have become increasingly popular because of, the abnormal new weather conditions that we have, where people are losing power on a more regular basis, or they're concerned about doing it. So the first question you should be asking yourself is, do you have a need for one? And the need might be that you have regularly lost power for some period of time, hours or days, and that's pretty regular. It's becoming more regular. So that's a need issue. Next question is, do you want one? I wanted one, even though I have seldom lost power over the last 30 years where I live. But I'm concerned about it because we had a lot of damage from Hurricane Sandy. These recent storms caused a fair amount of flooding nearby. And I had been confined to my house for a long time because of COVID. I hadn't spent any money, and I thought I could get this through my wife to get one. So I went out and spent some money on a generator, and it makes me feel a little more confident. So first thing to do is evaluate whether you need it or whether you want it. And I was clearly in the second category. I wanted it. I thought it would be useful if I ever did need it. And then you have to make a choice as to how much money you're willing to spend. Obviously, if you are in the need category and the frequent category, you may be more willing to spend more money than if you were in my category, which was I need it, we seldom use it, and therefore I want to spend substantially less. I'll have protection, but I won't have the same level of protection than if I had spent a lot of money. So let's go through the different types of generators that you can have. So, okay, here's this is sort of the standard, the gold standard, if you're going to have a home generator. Now, this is a home standby generator. And by standby, it means that if your commercial power goes out within a few seconds, this generator is going to start up automatically. It's going to disconnect the commercial power, connect the power from this generator, and you're going to go on in your house as though you've had power. That's just the way it's going to operate. So normally, this kind of generator can either power an entire house, or it can power a certain number of circuits in your house, say up to 16 different circuits in your house. And also generally they're going to be of two types. One will be natural gas. And if you have natural gas, you probably want to use natural gas. If you don't have natural gas, you can run it on propane, which would require a propane tank either above ground or below ground. So you say, well, why would someone want, for example, a propane if you've got natural gas? And I have a friend who lives in Greenwich, Connecticut, and he lives near the water. He's actually in a flood zone. So if you're in a flood zone and the water got up to, say, here, which is above, well, at least above your water meter, your gas meter, what the power company, the gas company, is going to do is shut off all the gas to that area, and maybe some surrounding areas too. because they can't define precisely. So even though you have a generator, because the area is flooded, you're not going to have any natural gas. So that's a real problem. So you have to be concerned about your area. If you live where you don't have natural gas, you're going to use propane. If you live in an area that might be flooding, you're probably going to use propane too. So that's that's one type. You know, if you had no concern about money and you wanted to protect your house, this is what you would get. Now, the downside to it is that it's going to run substantially more money. And you're probably looking at somewhere at $8,000 to $13,000, somewhere in that range. And even though the generator itself is not that expensive, the other work, there's a lot of electrical work, there's pouring concrete pad, there is gas work, there's all of that. It runs up pretty quickly. So you're looking in that range, 8,000 to 13,000, depending upon a number of factors. You know, for example, how close is your generator to the gas service? How close is your generator to the electrical service? You know, because all of that expense sort of runs by the foot. So the advantages of this are you're hooked into natural gas or propane. You can run for days and days and not have to worry about anything. Another advantage is that it's low noise, of course, has very clean power, and has very good ability to handle almost any power level you want. Of course, it costs more if you have a little bit more. So I didn't choose this because I'm not in the category where I need it, nor did I want to spend that kind of money, and my wife wouldn't let me spend it if I had wanted it. So that's where I was. So here are the two other kinds of alternatives, which run substantially less money. And anyone has a question, ask at any time. Okay, this is a portable generator over here. So let me zoom in on it. That is what they call an open frame. You can see it's just exposed. And it is a portable gasoline generator. It's a Generac XT85 EFI, holds 8 gallons of gas. Now, so if you have a power outage, what I have to do is I have to wheel this out of the garage. I have to go to the basement, and I'll show you what I do in the basement at the circuit breaker box. Then I come outside, hook this cable up, and I'll show you where I hook it up. Start the generator, go back into the basement, and then switch to the breaker for the generator, and then flip on specific circuits. So there's a lot of manual stuff going on here. Plus, I have this 8 gallons. This one is not especially efficient with respect to gasoline. This could take like 24 gallons of gas a day. Now, so if you got 5-gallon containers, you'd have to have 5 of them every day that you were running this thing, which is a logistical problem. And if you remember back to Sandy took out so much power that gas stations didn't have power and you couldn't get gasoline. So that's another issue. But all of this is, it's a lot of manual stuff to do. It does have very clean power. It will do what you want to do, and it will cost substantially less. This generator is about $1,000. Well, when I bought it at Costco, it was $1,000. And the electrical hookup, which was maybe 40 feet away to the circuit breaker box, was about another $800. And you should expect somewhere between $800 and $1,200, $1,300 for the electrical work. So in my situation, for $2,000, I had a house backup, almost full house backup, with this type of setup. I have no problem doing it, but there are a fair number of steps involved in it. Okay, so the next, let's see, where's my next? Okay, so this, what you'll see here is an inverter generator. I'll explain that in a minute. And this is a cover that I made for this generator. These generators have a lot of electrical equipment in them. They are not waterproof. You cannot leave them out in the rain. You can't leave them out in the snow. You know, so you have to have something which keeps that off of the rain and snow off of them. I built this for like $25 or $30. I also have sort of a lean-to that works off of the garage to keep rain. And that's my solution to that. You cannot run them in a garage. You just can't do that because the carbon monoxide is really serious stuff. It goes right through wallboard. You can't smell, it's really dangerous. And a lot of people die every year from running generators where it's not sufficiently ventilated. Okay, now this right here is something I bought right after Sandy. And it is what they call an inverter generator. Up until recently, they were much smaller in size. The one we just looked at has 8,500 watts, up to 10,000 for just starting power. This is about 2,000 watts, substantially cheaper. And its advantage is that it has very clean power. The one that I showed you before, it also has very clean power, but you have to be concerned when you're looking at those big and regular portable generators that you have clean power. And the reason you need clean power, and it's measured in total harmonic distortion, is that almost every home device nowadays, whether it's your furnace, it's your refrigerator, your computer, your television, all have a lot of electronics in them, and they do not accept high levels of distortion. So the standard is you have to have less than about 5% harmonic distortion. The portable generator I showed you, other brands do not have that. You might find them at a various price, but they'll have very high harmonic distortion, or they could have. These inverter generators are designed differently. So a normal generator would take, driven by an engine, drives the generator, and it's the result of the power that comes out of it is alternating current, AC, okay? These are more computer driven. So when it generates power, first it comes out as AC power, but it's not clean. A rectifier then converts it to DC power, and then an inverter converts it back into AC power. And the resulting power is very, very clean. So that's one advantage of it. They're relatively light and relatively quiet. This one's a lot heavier. It was an early edition. It was made by Hyundai. It runs well. It's just heavy. And that's why I have it on this little cart with these 3 wheels, can go up and down stairs. So I can get to my deck or wherever I want to run it. Now, usually you would buy this and you would run separate cables through your windows or somehow to get into individual devices. They run in price now from, let's see, my next slide. Where's my next slide? Oh, I think I got to go down. Okay. Oh, there it is with the cover on. Here is, this is the cable that will go to an inlet box on the side of your house. Normally people run cables through windows, etc. But you can, if you have wiring for the this kind of big generator, then you can hook it into the same thing. Okay, so now they all hook into an inlet box that goes from here into your circuit breaker box. So you'll have maybe a 20-foot cable that's going out to either this or to that. Okay, again, you've got to be covered, make sure that they don't get wet. So there's your portable generator. There's your inlet box. And you have two options here. One, you can run into a transfer switch. That's right here. Now, a transfer switch, what it does is when you use this, it will automatically disconnect commercial power. And these circuits, maybe 10, 12 circuits, will run off of the generator power. Okay. This design is a little bit easier with a circuit breaker box because you just have to be flipping a certain switches. The other alternative, which is cheaper, more flexible, but takes more work, is called an interlock device. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, so this is the main breaker to your house. Okay, that separates commercial power from inside your house. This is a special cut device, just a hunk of metal called an interlock device. And what it does is it prevents this commercial power from being on, and this breaker, which is the generator breaker, from being on at the same time. It's physically impossible. So if you want to go to generator, you have to flip this switch down. And you see, once you flip it down over here, you can then move this piece of metal over. It slides that way. So this can no longer go up, but the generator device switch can go over. So at that point, when you're on generator, you cannot physically go back to commercial power. So that's called an interlock device. But you can see you're doing a lot of things here, right? If I asked my wife to do this and she hadn't really worked and watched me doing this, she would have a problem. So, I mean, I have instructions all over, but this is not something you would want to just say, okay, by the way, I have never showed you how to do this, but we have a power failure and I'm away on a trip, just go do it. Not likely to work well. So that's the interlock device. Okay. So we were talking about those inverter generators, which are more expensive per watt or kilowatt than the regular inverter one, the regular generator that I showed you. And generally, they have been much smaller in terms of output. But in the last couple of years, there's been a tremendous change in this whole marketplace. A lot of new products have come to market. And I would say even within the last year, a lot of new products. This is the brand name is Predator, and it's sold through Harbor Freight. It's $2,000, and it's 9,500 watts, which is really a lot of power. This thing weighs 250 pounds. You can roll it around. It's an inverter generator, so it's very quiet, and it uses relatively less fuel. So you might use a third or a quarter of the amount of fuel that you use with a big generator like the one I have. I think in many circumstances it's overkill. You're spending at least $1,000 more. Duralast has one that looks just like this, and the inside of it is that. It's the same thing. Has some more bells and whistles on it. And these rate very highly, by the way. They're Chinese, but they rate very highly, and good warranties, and they're pretty nice. The question is whether you really need to spend that kind of money on it. This is a Honda, which is the same, well, it's the same size, a little smaller, actually smaller than the last one we just looked at, 4649 for a 7,000 watt. Honda is the brand. For years and years in the small inverter generator series, Honda is the gold standard. They're very durable. They cost a fair amount of money, but they're very good. If you're going to use an small inverter generator for camping, and you're going to do it regularly, or for a work site, and you're going to do it regularly, people buy Hondas because they just really work. But you can get others that are very, very good now for half the price. So here it is for 7,000, for 4,600. The last one we saw was $2,000 for what was it? 9,500 watts. Big difference, big price difference, and the other ones are getting better and better. So the efficiency of these with respect to gasoline, for example, whereas on mine, I'm going to have to put 24 gallons of gas in every day to run it for a day. You'd probably, some of these you could get by with, say, 8 gallons or 10 gallons. It's really a substantial difference in the amount of fuel they use, because this inverter technology allows the engines to run at variable speeds. They're very, very good. So this just says what's inside a generator. So let me sort of recap on this. A whole house standby is going to run you 8,000 to 13,000, somewhere in there. It's going to have 10,000 plus watts. It's going to have automatic transfer, clean power. It's going to be quiet. It's fuel efficiency irrelevant because you're on natural gas, so you don't really care, or propane. Certainly not portable. The portable ones, they run from like $550 for a small one up to $1,500. These are the large portables, or a little bit more. They're going to run 2,500 watts to 8,500 watts, something in that range. You have to be careful about whether they have clean power, but they probably will, but you need to check it. Just can't assume that they will. They're going to be more noisy. Some are not too bad. Some are pretty noisy. And they're going to use 18 to 24 gallons of gas a day. Some of them have dual fuel as well, so that you can use propane or gasoline. And a few have, actually, you can run them on natural gas as well. So it's tri-fuel. The inverter ones are going to run 500 to 5,000. They're going to be in power size of 1,500 to 9,500 watts. They're going to have very clean power. They're going to be very quiet. I mean, as you get in larger in size, they could be less quiet, but generally they're going to be very quiet. Use around 8 gallons of gas a day, and they have dual power, dual fuel, and there may be two have tri-fuel as well. And they're they're heavy, so you're not moving these things long distances. You're not carrying them upstairs. So you have to more or less have access to them where you're going to need to plug in the power. So that is a summary of the different types of generators and what you might care to do. So are there any questions? Does anyone want a generator? No.
I'm going to say, I wanted to make a comment. I don't have a generator, but I do have a power washer that was a Honda engine, because when you made your comment about some people wanting Honda engines because of their reliability, I will say that I am a fan of Honda engines, whether it's a weed whacker or a power washer. I've never gone wrong buying any type of product that had a Honda engine. So I am one of those people that would certainly swear by Honda as a good product for these types of things. Not having bought a generator, that would be a thing that would cross my mind if I was going to buy one.
Yeah, Honda's the largest generator of engines in the world. If you think they make car engines, they make lawnmower engines, they make motorcycle engines, they make unbelievable quantities of different types of engines. And so they're the largest in the world. They're Japanese, so they care about quality. But then on the other hand, you do pay for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of boat owners, right? You'll see Honda outboard engines as well.
Right.
So,
does anyone, go ahead, I'm sorry, Linda.
I have a different type of generator. It's old, but you have to use it outside because of the, the issues with the carbon monoxide. But you actually take an extension cord, which plugs into the generator, and then you plug it into the device that you want the power to. Right. So if you have a freezer or a refrigerator or a sump pump, and that's, what we find is the most useful, you plug it in, but it's very noisy and it's powered by gas. If I had to do it again, I'd go with that whole house generator. I'm envious of people that have it, because the other kind, it's a lot of work. And for me, it's scary. Even just turning it on, it's like the lawnmower, you gotta pull it to turn it on. I usually have to ask a neighbor to do that. But that's, it's
so you have to turn it on, and then you're running individual cables to different things, through the window or through a door, or so whatever it is. And it's not easy and whatever. So, you could eliminate that just by putting in the wiring from your breaker box to some power inlet box on the outside of your house.
Yeah, the problem, like you said, is that our breaker box is on one side of the house, which is very far from where the opening from the garage is.
All right.
So to get the generator over to there would be, pretty much an impossibility if it's a heavy rain or snow, which is when we usually, would lose power. So that's,
you just run the wire. It's just wiring to where you want to have it. Like mine's like 40 feet, I think, from the breaker box to the outside of my garage where you saw that inlet box. So, no good compromise. Well, if you have the money and you want to spend it, you install the house standby generator and you don't worry about it. And if you never use it for 20 years, you say, gee, it gave me peace of mind. On the other hand, if you're cheap like me, then you do other things.
I think Jerry Scola was going to say something about what he has, but he just disappeared. But
I will say
he has a generator, and it works off the natural gas as well as gasoline, and he has a hookup or a tap into his natural gas line.
Right.
Jerry, I was just going to say, you have a generator. Can you describe it?
Yeah, I have a Yamaha 4500. It has I can use gas or propane, but what I did was I had a plumber come in and put in a natural gas line. My Yamaha has a special attachment on the front for the natural gas, And so there's a hose that runs from the gas line to the generator, and then I have a line that runs from the generator to a box on the outside, and from that box to the breaker box on the inside. And then there's a special, actually I have two breaker boxes, one when the generator's on and one when it's off. And I can run a few lights, my refrigerator, my toaster oven, I'm trying to think. That's about it on it. And of course, with the natural gas, then you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get gas, because if you are out, so out of electricity, so is the pumps down at the gas station. So you may not be able to get gas for your generator. So
Right.
I went that route. I think I paid about somewhere around $4,000
Mhm.
for everything, doing everything,
Yeah.
the generator and putting in the electrical stuff.
Well, with the one I have, which is 8,500 watts, I can power everything in my house with some exceptions. Can't power the central air, but I do have a split system in a sunroom. I can't power the range, at least as far as you're going to put in the oven and that kind of thing, or the dryer. I have an electric hot water heater and a well. So I can't run both of those at the same time. So I can either have water or hot water. So, I mean, what you can do is you turn on your, turn off the well pump, heat up water, and when the water is hot, then you turn the hot water heater off, and then you put your, this is all complication, a lot of compromises in all of this. But you're protecting yourself against something, or you have a gadget you like to play with. How many times have you ever used it, Jerry?
Since I bought it, none.
Yeah. Well, that's insurance, right?
Yeah, well, I figured that was going to happen. I'd buy it and then we wouldn't use it, but that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I-
like buying life insurance, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the year, you say, geez, I didn't die. I wasted my life insurance, right? So,
And I don't need a generator because Jerry's next to me and I have a very long extension.
that's even
Yeah.
better.
The other thing that it also does is the heater and the fan motor on it, but I can't run the air conditioner with it. It won't work.
Yeah. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
Carl, you mentioned water heaters, and many water heaters run on electricity, but through Sandy, we had and still have a gas water heater that has no electricity need at all. So when you lose power, you still have hot water, which is very valuable.
That's good.
There's no electrical connection at all. So
Right. Yeah, that's very good. So,
Well, I think we should forward to the next topic so we
Okay.
get everything in.
yep.
All right. So I'm going to talk about postage meters and stamps.com as alternative ways to go to the post office during this pandemic, or even after the pandemic, because quite frankly, and it's probably safe to assume many of you have already using something that stops you from needing to go to the post office for just basic stuff. That's what my experience is with most people, but you never know. And it might be something worth hearing about if you've never used any of these alternatives. First, I'll start out with the postage meter. The most popular one is from Pitney Bowes. And you'll see these typically in larger firms, let's say, or businesses, or organizations. It makes sense because it can really process a lot of mail. It's a separate alone unit, although it does interface with your computer, so you can use their shipping assistant and use your contact database to put in addresses for the envelope. They have a small business model, which is like the mail station model. But a couple of things. I used to use Pitney Bowes many years ago until I switched over to Stamps.com, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I can tell you, having used both, I'm much happier with Stamps.com than I am with Pitney Bowes for my particular needs, because the volume that I'm using doesn't require me to get some kind of real large, postage meter, separate, standalone, big unit that I'm going to be sending out, 1,000 letters a day on or something like that. That's just not who I am. And it's much less expensive to run Stamps.com than it is Pitney's postage meter. Now, there are other postage meter companies out there too. I'm focusing on Pitney Bowes because they are the largest and the most popular. And I think if you were going to go that route, you probably would be looking at Pitney Bowes for sure. But it runs about $19.99 a month to rent the machine, the mail station smaller model. And compare that to Stamps.com, Stamps.com is $15.99 a month. So it's a little less expensive right there. Plus Stamps.com, you can cancel at any time. With Pitney Bowes, you got to have a contract. You're renting that machine from them, and it's usually an annual or 2-year contract. And if you're going to quit that contract, you're going to pay a termination fee. So right off the bat, I didn't like that whenever I was involved with them. It does also, the separate standalone machine for Bowes does require its own special ink. Your postage is going to be in a ink. You've probably seen that many times. It's very popular. You're going to pay for that. And if you're going to use their brand, it's obscene, the amount that they charge. I mean, I remember when I did it, I haven't used it in years because I've switched over. I remember seeing $79.99 for their cartridges, which was a small cartridge. It was obscene. And I then switched over to, alternative cartridges, that were substitutes for that, which were much less expensive, but the ink quality wasn't as good. And so there was a noticeable difference in the quality of the postage mark and the stamp going out. So it was frustrating because it was definitely more expensive to operate that machine. Their customer service, when I dealt with Pitney Bowes, I didn't like it. Like a few times I had to call up for whatever crazy reason. I don't even remember why, but it was like you were calling into a huge company, and I didn't like the customer service. That's my own personal experience. I'm not disparaging that, and maybe they've improved, but I did have to call there on more than one occasion over the years, and I never felt like I got great customer service. Compare that to Stamps.com. I have had to call in Stamps.com a few times, and I've liked the customer service. So there's just my own personal experience on that. Now, both of the Stamps.com and Pitney Bowes postage meter, they're going to automatically adjust the rates when the Postal Service raises its rate. Now, I can remember when I started Pitney Bowes, I think I was mailing out at 30 cents a stamp, okay? And it's a little less expensive when you use Postage Meter or Stamps.com than the actual stamp price at the post office. Because right now, the stamp went up to 58 cents. With the Postage Meter, either Stamps.com or Pitney Bowes, for mailing a regular letter, right, first class, it's only 53 cents. It's still expensive relative to what it is, but you save 5 cents, and that can add up if you're doing a lot of letters mailing, right? But I remember it was 33 postage meter, and it was like you could do 3 letters for $1. Now it's ridiculous. It's you can't even do 2 for $1. They do both include scales. You're going to need a scale. Stamps.com came with a 5-pound scale, and Pitney Bowes came with a 2-pound. So if you had something that was a little bit more, more than a letter that you wanted to mail, because you can do labels on both of them, and maybe you're sending something out yourself, it weighs more than 2 pounds, well, then you need that 5-pound scale that you'd have to pay more at Pitney Bowes than with Stamps.com. Okay, so that's just a general thing about the two of them. I will say this: if you're a small business person and you're not doing a tremendous amount of mailing, I would personally recommend going with stamps.com just because I've used both. And the key about stamps.com that I'm going to now segue into is that you're using your own computer to print the envelope and the postage right on the envelope. Whereas the postage meter, right, you're using their ink or some other company's ink, right? It's a separate machine. It does interface with your computer still if you wanted to. You print that envelope and then you run it through the postage meter. You manually, take your envelope and stick it in the postage meter and it puts the postage on it. With stamps.com, I do a letter and I just send it to the printer to print the envelope, and it the address on the envelope and the stamp. The postage stamp is printed right on the envelope too. So I'm using my own ink, my own print ink that I normally would use. So to me, that was also a nice feature that I just did it one step. And the extra ink that I'm using to print out the stamp is not a lot of ink, obviously, because it's just a little stamp postage. And I'll show you that because I wanted to just run through something real quickly if you haven't used it before. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you about? Another thing that I found. Now, I don't remember if I had this issue or not with Pitney Bowes. I can't say that I did, but I did have the issue with stamps.com where I printed out like 10 or 15 letters that I was sending and they were screwed up. I made a mistake in the addresses or whatever. I literally screwed up, but I printed the post on the envelope already. So the nice thing is it's very easy to refund because you can just go into their software that that you'll download onto your computer, and then you can just go find that you have printed out, and then you just check the boxes on that one and you submit it for a refund. And when you print it out correctly, right, because that's what I usually did, like I made a mistake and then I reprinted out the letter, so I have a stack of 30 letters that are right, but maybe I did 30 that were wrong. So now I'm request a refund for the 30, and I always get there's never been an issue on getting a refund because you're just certifying that you didn't mail that, which is the truth. I didn't mail those that I did print out. So it's very easy to get refunds. It's never been a problem. It always happens. It takes a few days for your account to be credited. And in both of these, I should also say, you like with Pitney Bowes, I remember giving a credit card. And if you need to replenish your postage, right, it's automatically taken in that situation. I think it was off my credit card. And I have the same thing here with stamps.com. I gave a credit card when my postage is low. It just prompts me I want to refund it. And then I fund it and I can choose how much I want to do. I want to add $50 or $100 or $200, whatever it is. All very easy to do. These are both easy to do. I don't want to say that anything is hard on either one. Very user-friendly. And to me, if you're not using like stamps.com, in my view, and there's not a plug, I'm not endorsed anything by stamps.com. I just think it's a no-brainer because it's less expensive and you can mail not just letters, you can mail anything. You can do certified mail, you could do priority mail, you can do express mail, you can print labels for packages. So to me, taking the trip away from having to go to the post office to do basic stuff that I might be fine, and forget about the pandemic, because I was, doing before the pandemic, just to have to go to the post office for any reason to send a staff member to the post office to do something is a nice thing to just be able to print it in your control and then just drop it off in the mail or just dump it in the mail at your building where they pick up the mail. So I think it's a no-brainer, quite frankly, to be using these features on this stuff. Let's see, I just want to make sure I check my notes here. Okay, so just for stamps.com, I'm going to show you how I did from the computer. But before I do that, you can also print out many times, you print out on a sheet like this. If you can see, these are stamps that comes as a sheet, and they have all different flavors. You can go you do pay for these sheets. They're not very expensive, but this one holds, I think 24 stamps, and you just print it out. And it comes. So now if I want to do the old fashioned, like I have a letter or mailing something and I need a stamp that I want to just peel off and stick, So I peel off and stick out stamps.com for 53 cents as opposed to 55. And it's just a no-brainer to have stamps. Just it's easy to print out stamps, you know, instead of going to the post office to get stamps. So that's another basic thing. So let me just screen share real quickly, and I'll do. Oh, you disabled it, Cole.
What?
Yeah.
No, I
Wait a
didn't. Well,
Did you
let's do
did
it
you make
again.
me a host again?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. You
I re-logged in. That's why.
yeah.
Okay. So. All right, so here's my letter, right? So now I'm assuming I have a letter or whatever, and I just want to go here and I want to print out an address, right? And I want to
Thank you.
mail it off to call.
Is this a
I usually reach call
prophecy?
most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So if I go up to Word, and it's very nice, and now I hit envelopes. Now I'm going to just it'll do that. It also gives me the my own address that I have already put in there. And now I'm going to say add electronic postage. So if I add electronic postage, print, okay, this is just a prompt for the address for me. All right, so now it's going to give me a screen like this. And now you can attach the scale, which I don't do because I know I'm mailing out a first class thing. You can attach your scale and it'll automatically, if I wasn't sure, sometimes I do attach the scale. It's just a USB plug. And if I have some kind of bulky letter or package and I'm not sure what it is, I attach the scale and I would just click auto and it would automatically give me the total cost of the postage based on what I'm sending, which is also a nice way to save on stamps because, you know, if you don't know, overestimate on your own, right? And you put 2 first class mailing stamps as opposed to maybe just you needed 67 cents or something like that. So it'll do it right to the penny. In this case, I'm just going to mail it. I'm just going to hit print postage. And by the way, you can see right here, my account balance, just caught it, is $4.84. So I'm just going to fund it right now. As I said, I'll add another $50 to my postage. And it'll gives you a confirmation and bang. And so now I have, $54 and okay, it has been. And so now I have $54.84 in there. So now if I want to just print this postage, I'm going to print. It's going to send it to my printer. But what's also nice about stamps.com is, okay, it also checks to the database with your address to confirm that you actually are sending it out to a valid address that's in the United States Postal Service. So this really comes in handy and I want to just show you, this is what it looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna print, if I can get the stamp right there, it just prints it right on very nicely. And I'll tell you what, I saw some mail in like the office, like in the hallway from some other attorney in the building that I worked with years ago. And I saw this black and white postage stamp and, which I didn't know was stamps.com at the time, but it caught my eye. And that's how I kind of got into stamps.com. I just looked and I was like, what is that? And so I saw the logo on the thing said stamps.com and looked into it. And I was very glad that I did that because it's really been a lot easier to use that. But what's nice, I was going to say about stamps.com in terms of comparing it to the database of the post office, I have at times sent out mailings, and if I have a bulk set of mail going out, it checks each one and prompts me if for whatever reason in the post office use, building 1, they use like a different abbreviation or something, or the zip code is a little bit off, whatever the defect might be, it will give you the valid address to use and substitute in. And so you feel a little bit more peace of mind that that mail is getting to where it needs to go. So that's a nice automatic feature that they have included there. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck because you think the address is right. I've done that to courthouses and it's telling me like it's an invalid address. And I'm like, I know I've been sending this to that courthouse. So it's not perfect, but very few times it screws up. It's not a big deal and you can get around it. So I'm I also wanted just to mention the name of the other postage meter company that I looked into, which is called, I think it's Quadian. It's Q-U-A-D as in David, I-E-N-E. I had never heard of them before, but when I was doing a little prep, I came across them as like, they were reviewed by some, website that reviews postage meters, believe it or not. And they were mentioned, and when I glanced at it, it didn't look anything super different than Pitney Bowes, and it was all very compatible price-wise and all that stuff. So I still said that I think Pitney Bowes is one to talk about because that is the one that is far away the most popular. So just in conclusion, I think it's a no-brainer. If you're a small business, go with Stamps.com. You can do a lot of things, more than what I'm even just about, and it's going to be less expensive than to run Pitney Bowes machine. And I love you can cancel at any time too, so you have peace of mind. And when you sign up, you're going to get a free scale, free postage, stuff like that. So that's my spiel on postage meters and postage stamps.
Now we're up on to computer backups. Hold on. So where
Oh, can I ask you a question of Lawrence?
Yeah, sure.
Quick one. Lawrence, you have any idea how Postage.com is able to offer stamps cheaper than the post office? Do they have a contract with the U.S. Postal Service or something?
Yeah, they do. They're licensed by the Postal Service, and so is those, and that's how they both are able to get reduced rates than if you went to the post office yourself.
Okay, figured. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go to. I'm going to go over here. Okay, so I was having lunch with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and I'm telling him that I'm doing this TechTime thing on backups for your PC laptop. And I said, well, what do you use to back up your computer? He says, I've got a hard drive, external hard drive. And I said, well, how old is it? And he says, 10 years. So I say, aren't you concerned about relying upon a 10-year-old hard drive, which is a mechanical device? And he says, no, I don't care if I lose my computer at all. There's nothing on it worthwhile. So I'm thinking, well, I guess that makes sense. I guess if it works, the hard drive works. When it fails, that the other fails, that's fine. If not, you haven't lost anything. Most of us aren't like that. That we probably have something on our computer that we really don't want to lose. So it might be photographs, it might be videos, it might be customer files, client files, it might be something. So it's up to each person to say, yeah, this is what I would really not want to lose if my hard drive or solid state drive on my computer went down. So once you've decided what you want to protect, then you have a couple of options as to what you do. Okay, so one is you can have local storage, which is an external hard drive. And this is just something I took off the web. So what are the pros of it? And let's say this is a hard drive, a mechanical hard drive, not a solid state hard drive. So the pros of it, they're inexpensive. They're easy to use, and the data is under your control because essentially it's in your office or wherever it is in your house or your office. Okay. Now, the other side is your data is inaccessible to you unless you are where your hardware is. So if you're traveling and you need something that resides on your computer hard drive or your external hard drive, you're out of luck. External hard drives can break. They can be destroyed. Hard drives are fairly sensitive pieces of hardware. I mean, because they're mechanical, if you drop them, there's a good chance that they will break. And they don't last as long as some other devices. They can be stolen if your house burns down, you've lost your hard drive in your computer, you've lost your external hard drive that resides with you. So there are those downsides. Years ago, when I really cared, I would have a few hard drives. I'd use it for a week. Then my wife would take it to her office and I'd have another one and I'd use that for a week and, go back and forth. So I always had one off-site so that I never lost a substantial chance. I wasn't really losing anything that significant for that amount of time. Okay. That was a long time ago. Now, the other alternative is to have cloud storage, which is, it is whatever you want is stored in the cloud. Now, the pros of that are you need an interconnect. All you need is an internet connection to do it. You don't have to store your data in any kind of physical form. And there are free versions from a lot of companies that will allow you to store a fair amount of information for free. And even add-on in significant quantities is not expensive. Okay. Now, it says under the cons, if you want to store a lot of information, you're going to have to pay for it. Again, not that expensive. Third-party storage is vulnerable to theft and hardware failure, and you need an internet connection to it. But again, you can access it from anywhere. That's the nice thing about the cloud. You can do that from anywhere. So now let's go back and look at these kinds of devices. Okay. Let's look first of all for cloud storage. And these are prices for 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte, if you're not looking at photos and videos, is a tremendous amount of information, documents, etc. That's a lot of it. For solo people, for very small, for a couple of people, law firm, that's a huge amount of information. Now, for Amazon, if you've got Amazon Prime, you can store unlimited photos. They're not compressed, unlimited photos in their original format. Then they have 5 gigabytes free for other files and videos. And for an additional $59, that gives you, unlimited storage for any files. And then you can see the other companies that are offering 1 terabyte of storage, MediaFire. It's only $25. That's a huge amount of money. I mean, a huge amount of data for that kind of money. Dropbox is a little bit more. What's another one in there? Carbonite, $47.99. Good deal. That's a lot of data. So you have, with Amazon, free photos, which takes up the most room on your computer, or videos if you're shooting videos, this can get up rather high. One of these programs that we do for TechTime or the other webinars, they run 1.5 gigabytes per program. So you can see if you start running a lot of video, it really runs up. So if you're going to do local storage, you have 2 options. One is a solid state drive, or the other is a hard drive. Solid state drives are faster. They're much safer because there's nothing really to break in them. And their footprint, their profile is very small. Okay. So the other is a regular traditional hard drive. So let's look at the regular traditional hard drive. Here's one, $69 for a 2 terabyte portable hard drive. 2 terabytes is a lot of data, $70. Here's another one for $114 for a 5 terabyte external hard drive. Good brand, Seagate. And here's one for 8 terabytes for $169. That's a huge amount of storage for a hard drive. Now, again, this is mechanical, has more chance of breaking, more chances of that. But we'll talk in a minute whether that's significant. If you want to go to a solid state drive, here is a Samsung, which is a 1 terabyte, $134. It's small, it's going to be fast, it's portable, etc. Here's the one you can often see around. Let's see. You've probably seen this look of one. It's a SanDisk. It's a 1 terabyte. I've seen them cheaper than that, $229. So these are considerably more expensive. These are solid state as opposed to the regular hard drive. If you are using this external hard drive in one place, it doesn't move, I would suggest you buy a traditional hard drive, a lot of capacity, very cheap. You're not running it all the time. You're only running it when it makes backups. The risk of damage if it stays in one place is not high. And so I think overall, that's the way to go. If you want to have something that you're going to make backups on, but you also want some portability that you might carry someplace when you're doing other things, recording a lot of stuff while you're traveling, etc., then you go with a solid state hard drive. Okay, smaller, more durable, faster, better. And of course, the ideal between cloud storage, excuse me, I moved the wrong thing, cloud storage and hard drive or solid state drive is do both. They're not that expensive. You know, keep all your photos on Amazon. Keep what you really, really don't want to lose in way of business documents, files, etc. Keep them locally on, obviously on your computer. You keep them on your hard drive or solid state external devices, and you keep them in the cloud. Then you can stop worrying about, you know, am I going to be protected? And then again, if you don't have anything that you care about, don't buy either, because most likely your hard drive and your computer is going to last for a long time. So those are your options. You know, I'm kind of a safety nut. So I do both an external local, which is a regular hard drive. It's not solid state. And I do cloud storage. And I don't think about it anymore. You know, I don't have that much that's that critical anymore because client files are not there anymore because I don't have clients. I have some financial stuff, but most all financial stuff can be replicated anyway somewhere else. So that's what I do, and it's not that expensive. Let me give you, for example, an historical perspective. This is interesting. In 1980, they had the first 1 gigabyte hard drive. It was the size of a refrigerator, and it cost $40,000. If you had a 1 terabyte hard drive today, it's the size of like that, and it costs $60, $50, somewhere in that range. If it were priced at the 1980 price, that would be $40 million. So that's how the cost of storage and electronics have come down. And they're coming down, that's continuing to come down at that same rate. So that cloud storage and external storage are continuing to drop in price significantly. So if you don't want to do it today, you can certainly do it tomorrow at a lower price. But I think it's important to protect in as many ways as possible what you really don't want to lose. So that's.
Paul, I got a quick question for you. Just, and we're running a little over, but just real quickly, you mentioned on the cloud storage, you put up a few things. One was drop, one was carbonite. Would there ever be a reason that anybody would need carbonite in Dropbox? Because carbonite isn't really so much like, carbonite is more like backs up your files to the cloud, but it's not really like a Dropbox, or unless it is, I'm not sure, but I know that
No.
They might just be a little different, but would you ever need both?
Well, yeah, I think you might, because people use Dropbox in different ways.
If your files are being backed up automatically by carbonite, that's what that does, right? It backs up your whole computer and it scans
Yes.
everything and it backs it up automatically. Whenever you change anything, it's backed
Right.
up. But if you're working with Dropbox and your files are in, I guess the issue would be if your computer, your Dropbox is just one file. And if you have files within Dropbox, they're all going to be in the cloud. But if you have other files on your computer that are not in Dropbox,
Right.
and you just have other files anywhere, you know, that's not going to be backed up the way Carbonite backs it up, because
That's
Carbonite
right.
backed up everything on your computer, including what's in Dropbox, probably, because that's in your computer too, you know, but it
Right.
just, it's more of a global backup for your computer than Dropbox. Dropbox is just
Well,
what's ever in that file.
I'm only used to using Dropbox in a more limited way, putting files into Dropbox where other people can access them.
Right.
You know, and I think that's how they started, but then they have gone into mass storage as well. But I use it in that limited way. You know, I put it there for a client can go get it out of the Dropbox. Or
Right,
you
that's how
can
I
put it
started
up
to-
there and let people make changes in documents, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I actually started so that I get my files from a different computer, you know, home, office, you know,
right.
laptop, phone, you know, everything is there. That's how I started it.
Yeah.
But, okay. We are at 1:10. So if there's any questions, we'll take questions. Otherwise, we should.
Yeah, I just have one thing. When I did some research for, cloud storage, I read some ethical opinions. And they were very specific, like the cloud cannot be stored on servers that are out of the United States. And when I try and connect with these cloud companies, a lot of them do not store in the United States. And I wondered, Carl, did you look at the ones that were on your list to see where their storage is physically?
No, I didn't. What kind of files can't be stored? HIPAA files or?
No, I'm saying if you are, all your files with your clients, okay,
Right.
those are confidential. And so the question is, who has access to them? And in the ethics opinions, that I've read, it says that if you're storing things on the clouds, it has to be, we hear cloud, but it's actually a physical device that's located somewhere. Okay, it's not really up in the cloud, although we think of it like
it's right.
that.
It's right.
So the question is, what if they store in China? What if they store in Russia? What if they store, it's not really confidential. And so the ethics opinions say that the storage device itself has to be in the US.
Couldn't you make that same argument, even if it's up in the cloud and my files in New Jersey are stored in Las Vegas? I mean, who's this confidential? The same
No,
argument could
I'm not
apply
saying,
whether it's
I'm
in.
saying that, I'm saying the ethics opinions.
No, I
don't
hear what
know.
they're saying, but I'm just thinking, is it automatically not confidential because another country and it is confidential because it's in our country? I mean, it
Well,
seems
that's
like
that is among the questions, I mean, that you have to ask when you're talking to the cloud storage company. Who has access? How do they get access? What's your encryption? I mean, those are all things, most of us, okay, carbonite, I've heard carbonite, okay, I'll use it. But under the ethics rules, you can't just use it. And the ethics
So-
rules have gotten more specific,
Right.
as to the questions that you have to ask.
So what you're saying is you have to go ask questions of each of these companies.
Right, and I think, this, where it's stored is really one of the major, questions because of, believe it or
Right.
not, other countries get access to our files depending on where they're stored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
So
not
I
the
don't-
same rules.
Yeah, I've never thought about that because I'm not, when I was practicing, not governed by those kinds of ethical considerations. I think generally they're secure, but I think one of the points said,
Sorry.
that is a problem. That is a problem that you have to think about, which is it's still up there, which it can be hacked, it can be gotten into by other people, and that's a concern. So,
Right, and in
I think
terms-
you should ask companies that question.
And in
actually, just on
terms-
another quickly, I think Zoom, I think it's for Zoom. When we first started to use Zoom a lot with the pandemic, you have a choice, I think it's on Zoom, to specify what do you want this to be, what servers do you want Zoom to for your Zoom meeting? So you can choose to have only United States based servers, or you can choose, other countries. So if you were at a conference that went to another country, because Zoom automatically, their routing puts on whatever server works for their flow of all these video conferences that are going on astronomically, right? But there's a lot of talking about, wait a second, I don't want to why am I using China's database or services for my Zoom conference in the United States? So there is actually in your home page settings on the website of Zoom, you can specify what servers you want to use for your own Zoom meetings and mediations for that matter.
I would be flattered if another country wanted to hack TechTime. Right?
There's a lot of valuable information shared on this meeting, and
That's right. Yeah.
it's worth something.
So I think if there are no questions, we have exceeded our time.
Yeah.
And I thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Carl.
And
And thanks everybody also.
yeah.
Okay,
you.
and we'll use
Thank you.
Bitcoin to hack in and you'll have to pay us in Bitcoin to
Yeah,
get your
right.
information back.
That's correct. Absolutely. Thank you. Well said, Terry. Well said.
Okay. Everyone have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a nice
everybody.
weekend.